All right, hello everybody, and welcome to an episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. And for my very special guest today, it is none other than Sam, not so wise, at least that's what he says. But hello, Sam. It is great to see you, and it's been a little while, but I feel like I'm almost back in Iceland right now. So it's really wonderful to see you, though. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm great. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for having me. I am a long-term watcher of DDF. I'm pretty sure I've watched every single episode. So
All right.
it is my absolute honor to be invited onto this wonderful show. It's one of the big, what I call the big three kind of talk
Oh,
shows. And when I started YouTube, I really wanted to be talking with people, long film conversations, and the big aim is to get on the big three. So I'm third of the way there, third of the way
nice.
to retirement, as it
All
were.
right. Well, I hope you get to the other two, whoever they are. I think I probably know.
You probably know they're quite obvious. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean they're definitely my favorite thing about this platform is getting to talk with people in conversations like this, whether they be focused on particular works of or series and that or whatnot that we happen to be reading together, or just getting to know the booktuber a little bit, which it's a joy, really. And I certainly remember when I was new to YouTube more than 5 years ago and there were people who were kind enough to notice me and say, "Hey, would you like to be in a conversation?" Or and that was just that's how this community works. So
Absolutely. And they're really taking off, right? I feel like so many people now have their own chat shows, and I
yeah,
have actually jumped on that bandwagon and started my own a few weeks ago. Um,
good. What's it
I'm
called?
very, oh, I'm so happy with the name. It's called Wisecracks. So, so yeah, I started that a few weeks ago. I talked with Whitney from Secret Source of Storycraft
Yeah,
and Bart from Bart's Bookspace, both kind of sci-fi channels. But
yeah.
we're like friends. We've done a couple of buddy reads together,
That's what Buddy
and
reads. Yeah, yeah.
so it was really nice to be able to invite them on. And now I just need to talk to some people and get some more people on because I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, I bet you that Wisecracks could make it the big four then, you know?
Oh, yeah, no, probably not. But that would be
Well,
nice. But
but you got the advantage of a great name.
exact, that is true. That is true. I'm very proud of the name.
That's half the battle is a good name, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This stupid channel name of mine finally has a benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So, and I do think that, I mean, I got my whole best of fantasy shtick, and that there was something that just sort of happened accidentally, really. But that's
Yeah,
wonderful that we have our little things that people can remember us by, I guess. That, in my case, Tweed. So,
true. Yeah.
but yeah. Yeah, if there's anything else that you would like people to remember your channel by, what would it be besides the clever name?
Probably just my good looks and my charm
Yeah, of
and
course. That kind of goes without saying, but
yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know really. I
hmm.
kind of consider myself as just like your everyday person, a normal, nice. I like to think of myself as kind and open and honest.
Well, I can attest to that.
So I hope that that's what people take away from it. I don't try to come across as any kind of sage of literature or anything. I just tell people my thoughts. I try and put it together in a clear, concise way, but I'm not very good at speaking, to be honest. So
Okay,
I'm
okay. I'm
still
I'm
practicing.
interrupting you because I'm disagreeing with both of those things. First of all, you actually are not giving yourself enough credit. You are very insightful when it comes to literature, and I think you are underselling yourself a little bit there. Secondly, what was the other thing you said that I disagreed with? I can't remember now. But anyway, I disagree.
Speaking well, or
Oh yeah, that. Yeah, I mean you're perfectly articulate. I'll tell you what I think is your special thing, your
go
superpower
on,
on
go
your
on.
channel. It's your sense of humor. which I
Oh, well,
love.
thank you.
It is wonderful. Just, it is very self-deprecating at times.
Absolutely. Hence
People
the name.
might have picked up on that already.
Yeah. What? No.
So, but it's also very, to me, very English somehow. It's a little understated, a little dry, but
Guilty as charged. Yeah.
it's always there, and I enjoy it thoroughly. So it's
But
something.
Philip, you have to say these things because you're the gracious host. So you could see, you you could actually not believe these things that you're saying because then nobody will think that you're that nice. So
Oh, come on. No,
I'm just living up to the
I know
self-deprecation.
you're doing a great job of it. But no, this is a huge selling point to me, and it's in the name. Sam Not So Wise. There's a hint of all of this in the name, so people come for the great insights, come for the eloquence, but also come for the humor over at Sam Not So Wise.
One point I want to make about that actually is that I have a catchphrase. I don't know if you've noticed, you probably have. Um, so like
Oh
I
yeah,
do
much.
my little go on.
Yeah, no, I know. You actually subvert the much ado about nothing
Mhm.
kind of thing. So yeah, you go ahead though. Yeah,
Yeah, so like I just noticed that every single booktuber says, without further ado, let's get into blah de blah. So
right.
because I'm so hilarious, I say with much further ado.
Yeah,
I'm so funny, but really also it's because like there probably is going to be a do happening because like I stumble a lot and make mistakes and stuff. So again, it's that self-deprecation of something's probably going to go wrong. So.
yeah. Well, I love the ado when it happens. So yeah. But you didn't just, out of nowhere decide to start a YouTube channel, obviously. Now you have I want to get to this as well because your background is actually in music too, and I love that. We have some very talented people in our community, and some of them, like you, are musicians. There's Nikhil Koparkar, and there's Joanna, there's Josh from Red Fury Books, and there's
Absolutely.
yourself. So I do want to actually make a plug. We absolutely need a booktube band.
This is
And
what I said on
you
Nikhil's
actually said it first. Yeah, you said it first.
yeah.
So when is that happening? And who's gonna do I have to organize this or are we gonna make some yeah, because you're a bass player
I'm a bass player, that's
and
right.
Josh plays the trumpet. Oh,
Hmm.
Brian Bell also plays the piano.
Oh, sweet.
He's got to be in there.
I don't actually know what Joanna plays. Do you know?
Joanna is a singer.
She's a singer.
She's your vocals. Yeah.
Oh, so I think what we should do is we should get Nikhil as the star composer to compose an awesome piece, right?
There you go. There you go.
That we can for these instruments that we can all play together and have a booktube song.
Yeah. Oh, that would be so cool if there were a booktube song. All
It
right.
sounds so completely nerdy, but I'm well up for
Everybody leave a comment who wants a booktube song, the official booktube anthem. And yeah, if there are other booktubers I'm missing who are musically inclined or talented, please let me know. But yeah, this has got to be a thing. This has to be a thing. I mean, I'll be in the cheering section for all of it.
it. Could you conduct maybe? Are you a conductor?
I can pretend. I'm a really good pretend conductor.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah, yeah. That
So
would be mayhem.
yeah, yes. But yeah. Anyway, so that's your actual background is you're a musician.
That's right.
Yeah, which is really cool. You've been in bands and all kinds of stuff, and you've produced, been part of the production of albums and things like that as well.
Well, so I studied music. I grew up learning bass. Basically, my brother was playing the drums. He's older than me. He's 4 years older, and I was starting to get into music. And so he was like, "You should learn an instrument." Yeah, of course, I would love to. And my brother said, "Not drums. You copy me enough. You can play something else." I was like, "Okay, fine." And then, but I'm probably going to mention him a couple of times in this because he's a big influence on my life and he's probably watching. So, hi, Gav. He was like,
Oh,
you should
brother.
play. bass because everybody needs a bassist. You know, everyone plays guitar or drums, so everybody needs a bassist. So I learned bass, and then it just took off. I just really just absorbed all of the music I could and really enjoyed playing the bass. And I went to university and I studied a degree in music, and then I studied a master's in music afterwards. And then I basically just fell into the musical theatre world. That was where I did most of my work.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of touring around the UK, a lot of the kind of fringe side of London mostly, but I did play one show in the West End, which was amazing for 10
Wow.
weeks.
Wow. Yeah.
I did a tour of South Korea for 10 weeks, which was
Oh,
just one of the
cool.
highlights of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the main thing. But of course, musicians have portfolio careers. So I did play on a bunch of albums and played with like folk singers, pop singers, function bands, all that kind of stuff. So
Huh. Huh. Oh, that's great. Wow. I mean, I love music, even though I'm not particularly talented at any instrument or at singing, but I just love music and I've grown up with it. I've encouraged it in my daughters, and
absolutely.
my older daughter, Rohana, is a pretty good cellist. So yeah.
I would agree. I've seen and heard her stuff. She is a fantastic player.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've heard you sing, I think, right? You know, you've got a passable voice, right?
Well, good thing about me is that I don't really care if I make a fool of myself. So if I can sing, but and I'm not particularly worried about how bad it sounds.
So
So
everybody can sing. This is what I always say. Everybody can sing. It's whether you can sing in tune, which is the most important thing,
yes,
which I
yeah,
believe you can. So
I
that's the
can.
most
I
important
think I
thing.
can come close anyway. My daughters, both of them actually have perfect pitch, which is
Oh,
and I don't think it comes from me, but yeah, it's
that's a scary talent. Like
yeah.
I've not met many people that have that talent. There's one flute player I can think of that I used to play with, and you could just play him any note, and he'd just go, "Yeah, that's a G sharp." Like,
Yeah.
what? How? It's mad.
Yeah. So anyway, let's talk about more about books here. So I do want to get a sense of your reading journey, and we're gonna go to the standard DDF question here, and that is going on the premise that you are what you read, Sam. What have been some of the formative reads of your life that could explain who you are today? And go back as far as you like, and we're going to discuss. I think I know some of the things that are come up later, but I'm not so sure about the earlier stuff. So, yeah, please lead us on this journey.
Absolutely. So, probably one of the reasons why you don't know much about my earlier reads is because most of my reading journey has been in my adult years. So after university, really. I did read when I was younger, but it wasn't something that really was a huge part of my life until after university. Like I was talking about, I was a musician, and that's really what I grabbed onto. That's really what took a lot of my focus from kind of 11 onwards. But I did read as a kid, and I do have some things that I can tell you about when I was a kid. And the first one was actually non-fiction. So, have you heard of Horrible History?
I don't think so. What is it?
I think it is quite a British thing. So, it's kind of history books written for
Oh,
children.
I have heard of this, and I think it is very British. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like stage shows of it and everything now. It's really like a big institution in the UK. So when I was growing up, kind of every other weekend, I'd go and see my dad, and we'd go and buy a horrible history book. And it's kind of these telling you the history, and it's like telling you stuff the grown-ups won't tell you about history, all these nasty things about
Right.
whatever. And
Right.
there must have been about 20 of them, and I read all of them. And I read this the like alongside those, this horrible science as well. So they were a very big part of my childhood, really, reading those. And, you know, since then, I've always had an interest in history and science. So it clearly was cultivated from these books, which is great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. If a series can do that, can get young minds interested in science and history and all of that.
Absolutely. They're brilliant. I really do recommend them to parents who want their kids to learn about things like history or science. I think there's some maths ones as well, because they really are entertaining, but also teach. And they're just really appealing to kids through that medium of being like, this is the stuff that your parents won't tell you or the teachers won't tell you. It's like a really clever way to get kids into reading and
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, DDF watchers, but yes, I read Harry Potter just like everybody else.
I mean, you're the right age. You're the
I
right
am the
age.
right age, yeah. So
Yeah.
I remember being in school and seeing people with these Harry Potter books, and I was like, "What is that? That looks awful." It's like seeing the cover of it, and it's called Harry Potter, and I'm like, "That looks like the most boring thing I've ever
And the
seen."
Philosopher's Stone, and of course over there, right? We hear they
Yes,
changed it to the sorcerer to make it more exciting, I guess. I don't know.
I've never understood that. It's the same with Northern Lights and the Golden Compass, although
Right. It's the trilogy is called His Dark Materials here.
right, but the first book has a different name in the
Just
UK.
called The Golden Compass.
Yeah, it's called Northern Lights in the UK.
Oh, yeah. Okay, okay, okay. Then yeah.
Although that sounds more interesting to me than the Golden Compass. So
You think?
who knows? Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Anyway,
you see lots of northern lights in Iceland, of course, where you are.
I do. I do. I haven't seen many this winter, but I do. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, Harry Potter, yeah, I remember seeing that and thinking, no, thank you. And then it must have been around the third book, and the hype really started to grow, and everybody was reading them. So I was like, all right, let's give him a go. And obviously, I loved them. They were brilliant.
Yeah.
And I kind of was a similar age to Harry. So like as the books came out, I kind of grew with him and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed them. But I would not say that they were kind of super influential on me. I would never think like when somebody asked me what's my all-time favorites, I would never think Harry Potter. Like I have a lot of respect for those books, but
Yeah.
they've not really influenced me going further. But I've always had an interest in the fantastical, and so they did really fit with what I was looking for at the time. You know, I grew up in a Star Wars house, big
Oh,
fan of
good.
Star Wars. So the fantastical, the sci-fi has always interested me. And then yeah, my
As far
teenage
as the
years.
Star Wars goes, though, if I could
Yeah,
go pause on
yeah,
that,
go on.
are we talking the original trilogy or are we
Oh yes,
talking the prequel or because you're
the
young,
original.
the original? Okay.
Yeah, the original. We had them on video and we watched them religiously.
Because you would have been the right age to have actually seen the well, no, actually, you would have
Yeah,
been,
I know, definitely. My
yeah.
dad used to take me to the cinema when every time
Okay.
they were released, those prequels, and I really enjoyed them. I was a
Okay.
kid, so I didn't really have, much context to be like, oh, that's awful. I was like, no, there's lightsabers and droids and
Yeah.
laser guns. It's amazing. What are you
Hard
talking
to go
about?
wrong with all that, right?
Yeah, and actually, still, I look back, and apart from The Phantom Menace, I do like the next two films a lot. Still,
There are, yes, the third one especially, I think, does get kind of operatic in its tragedy.
yeah,
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 there are moments there, for sure. And yeah, I mean, and also I think the actors get a lot of the crap that people throw at those films, but
yeah.
you've seen some of them in other films, and it's clear that they can act. So there was,
But I'm sorry, but you cannot deny that Ewan McGregor was a fantastic Obi-Wan,
yeah, I mean,
right? Oh my
exactly.
God, he
Yeah,
is Obi-Wan to me. Like he was amazing.
yeah.
It-
He did a really fantastic job as Obi-Wan, and of course he was channeling Alec Guinness
right,
in part, at least, in order
for
to
sure.
play that role. I think he studied Alec Guinness's performance as the original Obi-Wan pretty closely, and did a magnificent job, really, of making it his
I
own
think so.
character while channeling Alec Guinness's performance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you think of the classic archetype of the teacher, the magical teacher, I
yeah.
think he is one of the most important ones in sci-fi fantasy
Oh,
history.
What
He's like,
you can make a list nowadays of, there's Gandalf, there's
mhm,
Dumbledore, Merlin, and Obi-Wan fits right there,
absolutely. And
absolutely. Yeah.
I think he did that job amazingly, whilst, like you said, bringing his own flavor to it. A little
Hmm.
bit of humor, a little bit of kind of, I don't know the right word, like colloquialness, just like friendliness and
Yeah.
love
Little bit
that,
of a
yeah,
wry smile here and there.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Little
Cheeky,
cheeky.
handsome man. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He pulled it off beautifully. Yeah, I would say so. And it was also maybe timing too. It was early days of all the CGI experimentation, and there are some embarrassing films from that era, to be quite honest.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Including Lucas's attempt to revamp the original trilogy by,
Right. Yeah.
splattering in some, CGI here and there, which is that's not the version I like to watch
Hmm.
when I rewatch the original trilogy. But
My least favorite example of that is in, my God, my brain. This will happen a lot, by the way. I forget things all the time.
oh, I do too. Yeah,
Return of the Jedi, the third film of the
yeah,
original,
yeah.
where at the very end, an Anakin Skywalker is like, when they have like ghostly apparitions, and it's
Yeah.
changed to the young Anakin. What?
Why? Yeah, they put the actor, what's his name? Who plays Anakin in
I
the
cannot remember.
Hayden Christensen.
Yes,
They
yes,
put Hayden Christensen's ghost over the original actor's ghost there, and it was like absolutely the wrong thing to do. I think
absolutely.
they did
I
it
agree.
because they could, It was just like, ooh, look at this toy. It's a little bit like what Peter Jackson did with the Hobbit films when he just went crazy with all these toys that he
Hmm.
began to really learn how to use when he made Lord of the Rings. And Lord of the Rings was not overwhelmed by the toys. It was primarily story, and the toys, the CGI and all that served the story. With The Hobbit, it felt like the story was serving the toys, the effects and everything else. At least that's my take. But
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't watched the Hobbit films. I just don't have interest in them, to be honest. Like Lord of the Rings, like the film trilogy are some of my favorite films of all time. Like
yeah.
absolutely. But that kind of corporate greed of stretching out something so far, I just don't have any interest. I'd just rather read the book, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
But Lord of the Rings films absolutely were part of my growing up as well, for sure. At
Oh, good.
this,
Good thing we touched on those. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, similar time, I absolutely loved those films, and I always will. Me and my wife just watched them over Christmas again because,
Ah. Hey,
you
wait now.
know,
Extended version
of
or
course,
of
of
course? Okay,
course,
okay, okay. We're cool. We're cool.
of
Yeah.
course.
So, I mean, I haven't seen the theatrical release since it was in theaters. Just I'll watch the
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
extended version. Yeah,
Why
which
would you? Why would you?
I mean, if you could have an extra, half hour or hour or whatever for each film, why not?
I
Uh,
agree.
I do think that in the extended version, you get a little more of the reverence that exists in the books. And I like that. There are these particular moments that you can tell that the people who made these films were big time fans. But there are these little moments that not, I could see where for a general audience, it wouldn't be that exciting or anything. But for fans of the books, those are book fan moments, in a way that when you realize, they really do get it here.
Yeah, character growth and world building
Yeah.
brings brings more to the. Yeah, I completely agree.
For example, when early on in Fellowship, Frodo and Sam see elves in the forest, and they're just watching from behind the trees, and these, glowing figures are just kind of like gliding across the
With the
path.
beautiful song in the
And this
background.
beautiful song, and Sam says something like, "I don't know why, but they make me sad."
Yeah,
And that's what I mean by this. That's not in the theatrical release. That's what I mean by these quieter character, as you said, character or world building moments that, for me, restored some of the reverence that you can find in the books that was lost in all the action that you have in the film. The film is way faster paced than the books.
Yeah. No, it is. It's just kind of funny to hear because they are relatively slow films,
I
even
mean,
still.
yeah, it's funny. For probably, I would imagine some people today would even say, "Wow, these films are long and boring or whatever." But
Well, well, speaking of my older brother, he isn't always right because he says they're really boring. So,
oh
Gav.
no, here I was liking them too much. So it's all right. We'll forgive him. But anyway, we interrupted your journey. So
Yes.
you were talking about something before I stomped all over you.
Well, there's Harry Potter, and then basically the music took over, and reading became very sporadic. Like I would still read, but definitely not with any gusto. And sometimes I'd find something that I really like and kind of run with it. And then when that's finished, just kind of, okay, no, I'm not interested in picking anything else up. So examples of that would be like The Hunger Games, another classic of teenage reading. I still do think they're great books.
Uh-huh.
And there's a series called, I'm not actually sure what the series is called, but it's by Garth Nix. The
Okay.
first book being Sabriel.
Uh-huh.
Again,
Uh-huh.
very, very like high fantasy books, and I just absolutely ate those up. But this was a time when two of my most important reads were introduced to me, and both of them were by Gav, my brother. So,
Uh-huh.
he's going to redeem himself here.
All right, well, he's back in our good graces. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So the first one is 1984.
Ah, yes, definitely.
So he was going to study English literature in Edinburgh University. So he was very
Mm.
much getting into literature, and he said, "You should read this," when I was about 15 or 16.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And I remember reading that and just being absolutely blown away. Like, I did not know literature could be like this.
Mm.
I did not know that things could be so dark and yet so entertaining.
Mm.
And like I love dark stuff. I've always loved dark stuff. My music taste is very kind of melancholic and sad, so it kind of fit the kind of stuff that I like. And I remember the ending and being like, "What? You can't end a book like that." You
Yeah.
and just being absolutely amazed that it like this is genius. And until this day, it is still my favorite book of all time. So,
It's your favorite book of all time, 1984. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good choice, I think. And I've always often said if there were one book I could make part of the curriculum for people when they're about that age, really 16 or so, it would be 1984, especially today, you know.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
So I've been saying this for years though. But yeah, this would be a book I would have everybody read at a certain point.
Yeah. I do think some people get carried away when they talk about how prophetic some of these dystopian books are, like saying they
Yeah.
saw the future. Like, I mean, yes, there's a lot of things that you could see that are close to how we do things now.
History has a habit of repeating itself though. So
Oh, absolutely. But I do think everyone should read it. I think anybody who pretends that it's not a good book or it's not relevant anymore are just trying to be edgy. That's what they're doing, really.
I don't know if you heard that, but Siri thought she was being very helpful there, and I didn't even ask her anything, but she answered something. But suddenly,
Thanks,
Siri.
Siri.
Yeah, thank you,
She's
Siri.
watching, right?
No way, I guess. I mean, anyway,
Careful what you say. Big brother might hear.
Big Brother might be watching, or Big Sister, I guess. Yeah. So,
So
but
yeah,
that's
that
awesome
really
choice. Yeah.
yeah, so that really affected me. And I guess I started reading more serious stuff. Although I say that because the next one I was going to mention that is the big influence again from my brother was Terry Pratchett.
Ah,
So
okay.
he introduced me to Terry Pratchett around the same age, and I read The Color of Magic and The Light Fantastic, and that started my love of Terry Pratchett, who is now one of my all-time favorite authors, for
Now
sure.
I have to pause on this too because I read The Color of Magic and The Light Fantastic. And I'm sorry to all the Terry Pratchett fans for this. I do love Terry Pratchett, though, so I'll get to the rest of the story.
How do you stop this conversation?
Uh, you can't, you're stuck.
Ah,
So I just I have to say the Color of Magic Light fantastic. I love guards, okay? I love equal rights. I want to read Mort. I'm on board with Discworld. So before I get myself in trouble, I will say that I intend to be a Terry Pratchett fan. I will read much more of Discworld. But Color of Magic Light fantastic were just kind of they were
yeah.
okay. They were clearly satire, but I never once like really laughed while I was reading them. I expected to laugh hearing about the genius of Terry Pratchett and everything. It's just like okay, but I didn't get they didn't light me on fire, with a desire to read more. Now, would you being a much better read when it comes to Discworld? Would you actually advise people who are new to it to maybe start with something else instead of the first two books? Or would you say it's read them in order or whatever? What would be your advice? How would you get somebody that hasn't read Discworld to begin? What would be your take?
Well, the first thing I'll say is not everyone can write as good a first book as you, Dr. Philip Chase. It's, not everyone has such a wonderful talent as you. Some people have to, although you did take 18 years, so
I cheated.
maybe there's
I
that as
cheated.
well. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
cheated.
I would agree. I mean, honestly, it's 20 years since I read those books. And
Uh-huh.
I was a teenager, so I didn't have the same expectations or anything. I just found them entertaining, and
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
that's what really introduced me to them. So, but I would agree that they're not the best places to start, for
Uh-huh.
sure. He grows as an author, and so I'd want to have a conversation with the person as to where they should start, because as you know, and as a lot of people know, but maybe not everyone knows, is it's kind of made up of a subsets of series. So you have
Right.
the Night's Watch or the City Watch. You have the Death books. You have the Witches. You have the later books with Moist Van Lipwig. You have all sorts of different subsections. So I'd want to have a conversation with the person as to what they like, and then recommend from there, because they all have their own distinct flavor within the whole world that has its overarching flavor. So.
Yeah, that's a fair answer, actually. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So my favorite subseries is the Night Watch or the City Watch.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I really, really love Sam Vine's the policeman and the crazy crew, which just grows over the books as well, which is wonderful to see. I love the witch. I love it all. I love the witches, but my favorite character is actually Death.
Okay.
Uh,
Mort.
that
Yeah.
well, Mort is not Death.
Huh.
Mort is his apprentice.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Okay. Okay. I haven't read Mort yet, so I haven't learned
Yeah,
that.
but Death is just Death. That's his name. But the personification of death was just something that I found such a novel concept. And
Yeah.
you must have come across him in the
Oh
books,
yeah.
right? Because
Oh
he
yeah.
turns
And
up.
I think in at least a couple of those, the four that I've read so far, I've definitely come across
I
death.
think he actually turns up in every book at some
Oh,
point.
okay. Okay. Yeah.
But just
Seems
it's
a
so
nice chap. He's
he's a
he's
lovely chap.
yeah.
That's what's wonderful about him. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Like just him having like these in his books, the books that are focused on him, he has like existential crises within these books about himself and what he's doing, and it's just
Yeah.
such a novel, crazy concept.
Yeah.
This is the thing about that I love about Terry Pratchett is that yeah, he's funny, he's hilarious, but he is a thinker. He was a massive thinker. He really had a lot to say about the world,
Yeah.
and his way of doing it was poking fun at it, which is one method of making you think about some of the ludicrous things that humans get up to, some of the ludicrous things that we do every day without thinking about them. He will analyze them and poke at them and then just make fun of them and just be like, oh, yeah, why do we do that? That's so stupid. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. From having read, even I can see it to some degree in where I felt like he was more satirizing fantasy itself in the
Oh
color
yeah.
light fantastic. He broadens that satire in Guards and in Equal Rights to include society, and human absurdity in so many ways, but in a way that really does genuinely make you laugh and think, which is a kind of rare combination, I think.
Yeah. I mean, just he wrote what 40 odd books within the series, so he basically almost satirized everything
Yeah.
at this point. It was brilliant. And I've read every single one of them, and they are all good, in my opinion. But there are places you can start. So if you want the existential crisis stuff, you should read Death. If you want something with really funny, unique characters, you could go with The Witches.
Okay.
If you want something that's more based within like a city and looking at policing, then you should start with the City Watch stuff.
Right.
But there are also a bunch of standalones that you could try.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's plenty of places to get started with Terry Pratchett. Don't be frightened. I was going to say later that I used these books as palate cleansers.
Yeah.
I would read them in between big books in series. You don't really have to worry about going in any order. I actually read them all in publication order.
Oh,
So
wow.
I didn't read them in these subsets, but I read them all in publication order. And it didn't affect me at all. It doesn't really matter.
Right. Right. Yeah, because we talk about these sub-series, but they're really each a standalone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they do follow on from each other. Characters are introduced and they
Uh-huh.
may have more of an arc, but it doesn't really matter if you forget. He will remind you of stuff that's happened in the past, and it's not really that essential to the story. A lot of people criticize his like plots, which I can see an argument for, but he does have a lot of great stories, but it's not really the thing he's
Not
going
about,
for.
that's not the target. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
about the
He's
plot, is it?
no.
Yeah. Yeah, if
So
you're looking for sweeping plot, that's not Discworld. That's
no.
the point of these stories, is it?
Nope. No, it's all about the characters and all about the social commentary.
Yeah, and the humor. Uh, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, would you say that even you might have, having read Discworld at that impressionable age, your teenage years, is that an influence on your own sense of humor, would you say, on some level?
maybe, maybe. I don't know. I think I've always been hilarious. So I don't know. I don't know. No, I've always had. I don't know. It's hard to tell, isn't it? It's hard to think to before you were 15 and your sense of humor then.
Humor is a complicated thing too, isn't it?
Yeah, but I love dad jokes. I love awful jokes. So I don't know. Maybe,
And there's a lot of
maybe.
wordplay, we should say, in Discworld. Lots of wonderful, good dad jokes. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's the best. That's wordplay jokes are kind of some of my favorites, and the ones that are always making my wife's eyes roll.
Exactly.
The good thing now is that I'm starting to do it in Icelandic, so I'm starting to find things that I can
Oh,
make my
really? Now you know you're advanced
yeah.
Icelandic when you're making puns. Yeah.
That's my favorite to do now because she's
And
like,
getting eye
ah,
rolls. Yes.
yeah. I have made her brothers laugh with these though, so I'm proud.
Good, good, good. All right. I think you should be just as proud of the laughs as the eye rolls, honestly. But
Oh, I am. I am. And now she's starting to do it. And she's like, are you proud of me? I'm like, yes, darling, thank you. You've joined me.
good. All right. So Discworld, that's got to be in there. And then,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So
what?
then was university.
Okay.
And again, hello DDF watchers. I stopped reading at university, just like everybody else.
Everybody else who comes here, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can forget those 3 years. Basically, nothing happened. And then I came home after university and I found, like I was saying, the Northern Lights or the Golden Compass
Yeah.
on my sister's bookshelf. And I read that and I was just sucked in, swept away. I've always been interested in reading. Like I always like whenever I walked into a bookshop, I was like, oh, this is beautiful. So I always wanted to get the bug, and this is probably the series that started me with the bug.
Okay. His dark
So I
material.
read that, yeah,
Philip
and I
Pullman.
was just completely hooked by that series and absolutely devoured it within a very short amount of time.
Yeah, it grabbed my imagination too. I read it with my older daughter, actually, with Rohana, and we both loved it. It was a really cool experience reading those books. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a different kind of, alternate world, kind of fantasy. The whole premise, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, there's the premise about one's soul that we have here in this alternate world. It has to do with your familiar, right? Is your in a way linked to your soul. It is your soul in a sense in this alternate world, which is just kind of like, wow, okay, that's an interesting premise, right, to begin with.
Yeah. It's a wonderful series because, it's another one of these series that is labeled YA, but I think
Yeah,
any age really can take something from it. And again,
totally
something
agree.
that I really loved about it is, man, it's dark. It's really dark. Some really, really awful things happen in that book. And
Sure.
again, me being attracted to these kind of things, I was like, wow, this is not what I was expecting. You get this beautiful story, and it seems like it's going to be almost fairy tale-esque with these cute little animals that you can talk to that are part of you. And
Yeah.
then really, really awful things happen. It gets extremely dark.
I feel like that series gets the YA label only because of the age of the protagonists.
Yeah, but she's a teenage girl. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also just it has a lot of commentary. It has a lot of like religious commentary, for example,
Cotton.
which is very pertinent and you can read a lot from. So it's very thematic, it's very deep, as well
Yeah.
as being somewhat of an adventure as
Yeah.
well.
And this it's a trilogy that has this reputation, which I don't completely agree with. A lot of people have this knee-jerk reaction against it because they've heard, oh, it's atheist or it's anti-religious or whatever. I think it's a lot more nuanced than that, actually. Would you agree? That
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, it's in the third book. I think that criticism becomes loudest, but again, I feel like you're missing the point you think if you think that's all there is to it. There's much more.
Yeah. Like you say, I think it's more of a knee-jerk reaction,
Mm.
possibly people who are religious thinking that way. Um,
I think if you're religious, you could still get a lot out of the series.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah, and by
So yeah,
religious, I mean someone who actually adheres to an organized, faith.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess it's kind of more based around Christianity than other religions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, and I mean, his Dark Materials is a reference to Milton, and
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, and Milton is another author who explores humanity's relationship to God, and not only that, but Satan is, Milton probably would not have said this necessarily, but in many ways, you could argue Satan is the protagonist of
All
Paradise
right.
Lost, right?
Yeah, I've not read that book, but there is a module at university next year that has it, but I think I'm gonna miss it.
Oh no! Okay, well you can just read
Yeah.
it anyway, because if you were to read it, I think it would inform your understanding of his Dark Materials, and also it's right behind you of the Faithful and the Fallen, because
Yeah.
John Gwynne engages a lot
Oh yeah,
Paradise Lost in the Faithful and the Fallen, but we'll get to John Gwynne later. So,
yeah. Yes, we will. So yeah, moving on. Um, there's this wonderful discount bookshop in the UK. Well, I say wonderful, it's kind of a little bit tacky, but they have these like deals and like box sets of books. So after reading that, I was like, okay, I've got the bug, let's go. And I went into that shop and I saw A Song of Ice and Fire as
oh,
a book set for quite cheap. And I was like, I've heard about this. I've heard about the TV show. Let's read that.
yeah.
And yep. that was pretty damn good. I very much enjoyed that. That was exactly what I was looking for. This was kind of the start of my, I guess, reading kind of medieval fantasy or whatever you want to call it. This was my first experience of it. And what a way to start your journey. This
Not
is,
bad. Yeah.
yeah. So that was extremely influential. Remains to this day one of my favorite series. I haven't read it since. I would absolutely love to, but time, TBRs,
They are
everybody,
thick books. Yeah.
they are thick boys, and I
My
don't have
last
time.
reread was just before starting my channel, so it was over 5 years ago. Yeah.
I will reread it one day, but I still feel like I'm catching up. But then I probably always will feel that way, so who knows? If
And
he
I
ever
made this ridiculous.
releases, go on.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I made this ridiculously optimistic video, one of my first videos, thinking that Wind and Truth would be coming in the next year or something like that.
Winds of Winter.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Wind and Truth, of course, is Brandon Sanderson. Winds of Winter. A lot of wind, and
Yes, true.
sorry. Yeah, Winds of Winter. Thank you for correcting me. I made this ridiculous prediction that it would be out. Oops.
Yeah, I mean, if it ever does come out, then I'll be rereading those books straight away.
For sure. For sure.
I have this theory, right, that he is absolutely duping us all, and one day he's just going to be like,
Here they
"They're both,
are.
they're both done. They're both done. Here you go, bosh."
That's, I think, our fantasy. A lot of us will confess to
Oh,
having that
yes.
thought. That
Or maybe when he dies, so he doesn't have to hear about it, like maybe it's like a thing that he'll release when he dies.
that would be wild. Huh. You heard it here first.
I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
Sam, not so wise, made the prediction. I would be so, I mean, obviously it would be sad in a way, but obviously we would all be thrilled to have those two books. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's going to happen. But then came the big one for me. So after that, I was like, yes, this is it. I am fully in this now.
You were looking for a new one then. Yeah.
Yeah. What what series can I find is the biggest and longest that I can think of, right? And I remember when I was back just after my degree, I was working in a shop and somebody was telling me about this series called The Wheel of Time. And so I went and looked it up and I was like, oh, 14 books. Oh, they're all the size of bricks. Let's go. Let's go. And so Wheel of Time, that's what I read next. And I was just completely absorbed. And that to this day is my favorite series now. So that tells you the impact, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. The 14 books, and of course there's the prequel.
I haven't read the prequel, which is quite
No, it's interesting.
embarrassing to say, isn't it,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. It's good. What is it called? New Spring, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Um,
So I actually found a copy of it in hardback first edition. So I
aha.
do actually own it now. But again, I just don't have time to reading a 15 book series.
I have a copy of it myself, but so it was first published as and I might have this wrong, so someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but it was first published in one of those collections of short stories that are they still make these things. Like they'll get famous authors to write a short story set in their world. And so Jordan wrote this prequel. And originally, New Spring was gosh, if I could find it somewhere here on my shelf. I'm not sure how I shelved it though because oh yeah, here it is. So it's called Legends,
Mm,
and it was edited by Robert Silverberg. And
okay.
actually, here's a picture inside that is from New Spring.
Lovely.
Yeah. Same art style as the famous or infamous covers for Wheel of Time.
I tell you what, I absolutely love them.
The
Honestly.
cheesiness of those, you can tell there's a Dark Tower story in here as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Kind of nice.
And this book has some pretty cool stuff in it, actually. But I think this is where, and I may get corrected by somebody, but I think this is where New Spring was first published. But it's a shorter
Okay.
slightly shorter version of New Spring. I think Jordan lengthened it. Imagine Jordan lengthening something. Um,
What?
he lengthened it when he published it as its own thing. But there's stuff in here. There's Stephen King, Terry Pratchett,
Nice.
Discworld, the sea and little fishes. There's a Terry Goodkind. There's Orson Scott Card, Silverberg himself. There's an Ursula Le Guin story called Dragonfly. There's a Tad Williams story from the Austin Art called The Burning Man. And there's a George R. Martin, A Song of Ice and
Ooh.
Fire. The Hedge Knight was originally in here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And there's an Anne McCaffrey book. There's a Raymond Feist and Robert Jordan's New Spring.
Okay. That
So
sounds like a collection I need to get. That sounds amazing.
yeah, yeah. This is one of the. I don't know if again, I'm not sure about the history of these kind of like collections of these stories, but this is an important one. If it's not one of the first ones that came out, I wonder when this actually came out. But this was from 1998. 1998. So yeah. But anyway, you do need to read New Spring in whichever form.
Yeah, I
You've got
will.
a
I
copy.
will.
You've got a copy now, right?
Yes, I do. In fact, I've got like all of the old school copies. I found them in a secondhand bookshop, and
Oh,
I,
good.
I am a sucker for like old-fashioned covers that are kind of ugly. I don't know why, but I
That's
love
Wheel of
them.
Time right there.
Which is my favorite? This is my favorite
Oh
one.
gosh, that
Oh
one
my
is
God.
so, yeah.
Look at that shirt. Oh, I want that shirt.
That bat creature there. Yeah.
But I also found the last two books in hardcover first edition as well. So happy days.
Nice,
But
nice.
yes, I'm a wheelie. I'm very much a wheelie. It's still my favorite series. Uh, I know the series gets a lot of flack from a lot of people, but I absolutely love it. And it
Was for weird
just,
reasons. Some valid, I think. Some like the slog you hear about is the biggest complaint, and I actually did not experience the slog when I was reading the series because I didn't know there was a slog.
mhm.
So I just read it.
I I did experience the slog.
Okay.
Honestly, I did. But not so, it wasn't something that just turned my opinion of the series on its head. It was just something that I went through, and there was still something I got from each book. I didn't want to stop. And then I think the ending, the last four books, are some of the best in the series. So just, it didn't really bother me, really. But I do remember, I can't remember which book it was, maybe Winter's Heart or something. I remember getting to the end of that book and then turning to my wife and it was just like 800 pages and nothing happened. But
Okay, yeah, you experienced it then. Yeah.
yeah, but I think this series, like I always call it a bridge series, like a
Yes.
between the classic and the modern fantasy.
Yeah. Like
So
Tad Williams' Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, I think. Similar era. Or even you could argue, I think, Realm of the Elderlings to
I
some
was
degree.
literally just going to say, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I would agree. Those three are three of the main ones. And so it
And
has an
Song of Ice and
important
Fire.
place.
Well, no,
Yes.
Song of Ice and Fire really sets the trend for the kind of grimdark era that follows, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
So I'd say it's very important historically. That doesn't mean you have to like it, but I did really like it. The characters, man, that like, and a lot of people complain about the characters, like, oh, they're just whingy teenagers. Like, have you met a teenager? Like,
Yeah, I've raised a couple. So,
that's what they are. And then they grow over the series of the book into something completely different. If
yeah.
you think of the journey of Nynaeve, she has a similar, kind of similar journey to like Malta in the live ships is where at the start you just kind of like, oh, I want to strangle you. And then by the end, you're like, you
Pull
are
on
my
your braid.
favorite. I
Yeah.
love you. Yeah, yeah, pull your braids. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yes, that is my favorite series of all time. So, that is obviously a big part of my journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. It's a big one, and it's certainly one that I'm glad I've read. It's under my belt. I'm not sure if I'll ever reread it, but if I do, I'll ask you if you want to read it along with me. How about that?
Oh, but you don't even need to ask. You just say, Sam, I'm doing this now. Join.
Okay.
I'm slightly worried because now it has been a long time now, so maybe my perception of
Uh,
it will change. I don't know. I don't think so, but there is obviously that risk,
I think it's a slight risk, but yeah. Yeah.
especially as I go through university more, I'm going to become more snobby. So, uh,
I doubt that.
yeah.
Well, we'll see. You'll have to practice pushing up your glasses and
Yes, true. Looking over them.
yes, there you go. There you go. You got the pose. All right. So Wheel of Time, huge, big part of your
Yeah,
identity. Big part of why you started a channel, I guess, too, right?
kind of. I mean, I started the channel because I've been watching BookTube for a really long time, since
Mm.
like 2019. And I was thinking about it for a really long time, just always putting it off like, I don't know how to talk, I'm rubbish in front of the camera, blah, blah, blah. And then I was unemployed for a while. So then I was really gearing myself up to do it. And then basically you kind of poked me to do it. It's
Yeah.
your fault. So
I'll take the guilt. I'll take the blame. Yeah.
yeah, so you visited me in Iceland
Yeah.
and I was talking about doing it and you dangled the carrot. You said if if you start, you can have this conversation with John Gwynn and these other booktubers. So I was like, well, now I have to. So
I followed through on it too. We had
you
that.
did. You
Yeah.
did, and it was amazing. It was definitely highlights of the channel so far.
Cool. Yeah. When did you start? When did you read The Faithful and the Fallen? And I know when you read the Bloodsworn trilogy,
hmm
but
So I read Faithful and the Fallen around 2021, I think.
after starting to watch YouTube or book.
Exactly, yeah. It was definitely BookTube that informed me of the books. People like Mike. I think it's pretty much Mike that was
Yeah.
talking about it a lot. And so yeah, that's when I picked them up. And
Mike got it from Petrick. And
yeah, of course,
I heard
Petrick
about
as
it
well.
from Mike myself, I think originally. And yeah, yeah. I had my war band that I was reading it with back in the day in my early
Yeah,
days of BookTube. And cool story that the Gwynn brothers have told is that actually that series with that I was involved in of buddy reading, The Faithful and the Fallen, along with Patrick and that group with Abby and Abby Salter
yeah.
and Alex, and yeah, it was a great group, and I think that Alan was in on that too. But anyway, it was a group of us, and the Gwynns saw that our discussion of Malice, I think, on my channel, and that's when they said, "Hey, maybe we should start a YouTube channel." So the brothers Gwynn um, were inspired by the discussion of the Faithful and the Fallen that we had.
And that's brilliant because they are absolutely amazing.
I know,
I love it.
right? I mean, I love their channel so much, and all of us
Again,
want to be a Gwyn now, I think. But
yeah, that's that channel just has everything because they're so smart and they're just so funny. Just
well read,
brilliant.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus,
And
they're
it,
hurt. They're John Gwyn's, kids too. So
well, I'm trying to give them their own benefit, their own
yeah,
merits, not just
yeah, yeah.
their father's benefits, but that is a nice one. And also they're just so widely read as well. I love
Yes,
I love that. They bring quite different books to the sphere that we tend to dip our toes in.
they're actually one of the best channels to watch for historical fiction
For
recommendation.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. I love that about them. So yeah.
So yeah, Wheel of Time. So I know this isn't a new thing, but how I generally read is I'll choose a series and I'll read a book in the series, then I'll read something in between, a standalone, next book, standalone, etc., etc.
I think that's
I'm
smart.
Yeah, I know a lot of people do that, but that's just how I've always done it. I do not understand people who have 40 series going at a time or whatever, or they've read so many first books and or like they spread a series over so many years. I can't do that.
I gotta tell you, it's a bummer as a writer when somebody reads your first book, but they have so many other series they want to try, and they're reading a bunch of first books everywhere, and they're never following up on that first book.
Yeah.
Well, what about, my second book,
Yeah. I don't get it. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I have an awful memory. So I can't spread it that wide. I have to read them quite close together. So it's changed a little bit. Now I'm on YouTube, like I'm spreading it a bit more, but I can never really have more than two or three series going at a time. So
Well, the problem is too, we fantasy, which you read science fiction and fantasy on your channel, but fantasy especially is very series oriented traditionally.
absolutely.
And the further you go in a series, the less you can expect to have in terms of engagement, because fewer people have read that far.
Yeah.
You're doing book, 12 of Wheel of Time, you're going to have fewer views typically than if you're doing The Eye of the World, right?
Yeah, that's true. I try not to think about that too much and like
I
do
don't
things that I
either.
want to do.
Yeah. I don't think about it either, but it's a sad fact. I've noticed many times because I will do
Yeah,
whole read-throughs of whole series on my channel, and I can see the numbers. I don't really pay much attention to them, but I see them and I notice that there are fewer people watching with
for
each.
sure.
Yeah. So sometimes though,
Yeah.
if you can package it cleverly, when you finish the series, you can do a why you should read this series.
Right. Yeah.
That does pretty well usually. So there's a tip for uh
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever like review a book three of five or whatever. I might review the first one and then the series together. That's kind of
Yeah, that's
how.
probably smart. I'm not that smart. So I not only do I review books that are like 10th in a series, but I'll have like in-depth discussions on
Yeah, yeah.
so, which
But
it's not the sexy thing to do on BookTube, but
I don't mind that because that, like I said, that's kind of the reason I wanted to join BookTube, like to talk to people. So that's the main reason for me to chat with
yeah.
nice people about good books. So that I'm less bothered by. But thing is, so yeah, I was reading Wheel of Time and I'd read books in between, a lot of standalones.
Hmm.
And so things would, I've got a little list here. This is where things like I would read an Ishiguro book.
Oh,
So
okay.
Ishiguro is a big one for me. David Mitchell.
Yep.
I've George Orwell books. I've read all of his books. Neil Gaiman, unfortunately. Um, Pratchett, like I said, he was very good for those in-between books. And also, this is where I started my love of Ian Banks,
I was
who is
just
my
going, that name was on the tip of my tongue. So
yeah,
yeah, good. All right.
who's my favorite author of all time. He's only just overtaken Orwell, so he was my favorite author. Like I read all of his books and loved all of them, but just the more I read of Banks, the more I realize that he is now my favorite.
Okay. So wait,
Of-
I got to get this straight. 1984 is your favorite book still.
yes,
Banks is your favorite author.
yes,
Wheel of Time is your favorite series.
correct.
Okay, good. All right. I like that you put
Um,
all three in that way. Yeah, I like that.
yeah, and he Ian Banks has written my favorite sci-fi series, The Culture,
Yeah.
which would be my second favorite series of all time. So yeah, Banks is one that is seldom talked about on YouTube.
True.
And I'm really trying to fly the Banks flag.
That's another thing about your channel, you know. We all have series that people think about when they think about a certain series. One of the series that I started really to reach more people was Malazan. Um,
Yes,
when people think about Malazan, they may think about my collaboration with AP, in our
absolutely.
series. So you're going to be the Ian Banks channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to have that as my moniker, the Banks guy.
Yeah.
I think he's brilliant. I think he's grossly underrated and underrepresented. You know what I mean?
You got it.
Um, so I think more people need to read him. I think a lot of people will like him. You know, he has the hard sci-fi, right? So it is hard sci-fi. So maybe if you're not into hard sci-fi, you might not like that. But he has two names, is Ian Banks or Ian M. Banks. M is when he's sci-fi, Banks is when he's not.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't realize that. All right.
And his contemporary fiction, I don't know how to label stuff like that. Contemporary fiction is also brilliant.
Huh.
And to me, he has everything. He has absolutely everything. He is just a masterful storyteller, right? He really knows how to weave a plot in really interesting ways, grabbing your interest, putting little slices of interest here that you know will become important later, so you pay attention and it comes into fruition later. His character writing is wonderful. He's got great character voice.
Hmm.
He's always got something that he's trying to say. He was like a massive lefty. I'm a massive lefty, so he had like, that's kind of speaking to me, obviously. So he has a lot of things that he wants to say about the world, very thematically driven. And he's a British writer, so he has some British humor, and he has wonderful humor that is in every single book.
Huh.
So to me, he's like the full package author. I love him.
Yeah. I see a bit of a thread here in the your book taste, which is you do love your humor, don't you? Yeah.
I do, but it's not really what I look for, you
Uh-huh.
know. For me, it's like a flavor in his books. It's not
Okay.
like the main thing I go to his books for. It's
Okay.
just nice that it's there.
Gotcha. So it's not like, I don't know, have you read the first Law books by Joe Abercrombie yet?
Yeah, see, so I've read the first trilogy
Okay.
and I was lukewarm on it, to be honest.
Interesting. Yeah, and that
Like,
he's well known to be one of the primary humorists in the fantasy.
yeah, yeah. So, it's unpopular opinion if you want, but I liked them, but it wasn't like this has happened a few times with a few series that I've, read because of BookTube, where the hype is so big. And so I read them all excited, and I think this is going to be one of the best things ever. And I'm like, that was good. And
Wow.
that's it. Like, that's like, I don't have any feeling like I need to go and read the rest of his books. Like,
Uh-huh.
I liked them, but it wasn't an all-timer for me. It's
Okay.
happened. I might be getting some unsubscribes by saying these kind of things. But so like Abercrombie, The Expanse,
Uh-huh.
sci-fi series, like again, good but not mind-blowing. The Greenbone Saga,
Uh-huh.
uh, what else? Red Rising,
Okay.
yeah, those kind of things.
Okay. So they're not quite up to for you, your the level of your engagement and enjoyment with the like Ian M. Banks or I see Dan Simmons Hyperion there.
Yeah, no, not that like they're good, but they're not earth-shattering to me. They clearly just like hit a wave.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's maybe just not my style. I'm not really sure I can put my finger on why just
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. No, I think that yeah, you're onto something. I mean, you mentioned Greenbone Saga. I read that and I liked it a lot. And it probably would make a top 20 for me or top 30 maybe. But there are certain things about it that I really like, but it wasn't the for some people I know it's like their favorite thing of all time, or it's up in their top three at least. And yeah, for me it's really good. It's entertaining. It's good pace. It's got some good emotional moments, some really iconic moments. But it wasn't something I think about for a long time after I read it or something like that, so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For me, a lot of these series, maybe not Abercrombie, but a lot of them, I think they're really good series that get people into the genre.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? They're like,
Yeah, the classic example of that is Mistborn.
yeah,
Brandon Sanderson. I think that, other than Harry Potter, that probably has been the series that has gotten more people into fantasy than any other that I've heard of from doing this, from doing Dear Doctor Fantasy. So,
Yeah, that's the one. Like you have the main three. You have Harry Potter
yeah,
that was influential. I stopped reading at university, and then Mistborn.
it's boring. It's the other one. Yeah.
So I'm only two of three.
Yeah. It
I
was,
have
or
read
Harry Potter when I was little. I stopped reading at university, and then I read Mistborn. I got back into it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have read Mistborn, and I did like it, especially the ending. Um, but it wasn't one that got me back in. Like I do really like the series, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in your Brandon Sanderson take because you're a huge fan of Wheel of Time, and obviously he did in my opinion, a very good job of finishing that series for Robert Jordan. The last three books are, I never thought, oh, this is just such a huge, discrepancy between what came before. I thought he did a very good job of finishing that series. So, how are you on Sanderson's solo stuff? Are you a fan? You just talked about Mistborn, Stormlight Archive. Where are you with that?
See, I kind of knew you were going to ask me about this. I don't know why. I had a sneaking suspicion. Um, I have a complicated relationship with Sanderson.
Uh-huh.
Um, I did like his finishing of Wheel of Time. Obviously, I thought it was brilliant. I liked Mistborn, Warbreaker, quite good. Tress of the Emerald Sea, again, unpopular opinion, but I thought it was not good.
Okay. Okay.
Not good at all. Like the most cringy book I've ever read. Um, Stormlight, man. I'm still processing it. I read it all last year. I read all of Stormlight last year for the
You
first
did
time.
read Wind and Truth.
I did read Wind and Truth.
Yeah.
Talk about a polarizing book. My goodness.
Yeah.
Um, I can't decide on Sanderson. There's some things about him that I really, really love.
Uh-huh.
And there's some things about him that really, really grind my gears. So I can't make up my mind
Okay.
how I feel about him and how I feel about the series. And I read Wind and Truth and I quite liked it. I thought it was a good book.
Uh-huh.
And then I see all of these people criticizing it and I start to listen to them and I'm like, yeah, I kind of have a point. So
Yeah.
now I'm confused. I'm just so confused. I don't know how to feel about him. I
But
thought
what
it
did you
was
like about it in a non-spoiler way? What would you say? Because there are people out there who have said, like Mike, for example, I said a lot of positive things about Wind and Truth. He had some criticisms too, but he had a lot of positive things to say. So what would you say? Why did you like it when you were reading it?
so it was different to all of the other books,
Uh-huh.
right? It felt different. It felt like more nuanced to me. It could have so easily been, being this last book in the this part of the series, it could have so easily been a book full of magic fights and epicness,
Right.
but it wasn't. It was a lot more subtle. It was a lot more calmer moments, a lot more conversations, a lot more thinking, a lot more processing emotions,
Okay.
rather than just I'm more magic now and I'm really strong, so I'm gonna beat you up with my higher level magic. It
Right.
wasn't like that, and I think a lot of people maybe expected that and wanted it and wanted this epicness, but I think it has just, yeah, like I said, a lot more nuance, a lot more thought
That
going on.
actually makes me want to read it because I've read the first three and I have been stuck on Rhythm
Yeah.
of War because from what I've heard, it has a lot of exactly what I least enjoy when I read Sanderson's, which is the magic and the magic system to be specific.
Yeah.
Not interested in how fabrials are constructed and all of that. So I have hesitated to read Rhythm of War, but I'll read it. And I'm curious to see how I'll find the last book, actually. I may
I'm
actually be in the minority of people who actually think it's good. Who knows?
yeah, I'm really interested in what you'll think. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things I don't like. Like a lot of people have complained about the ham-fisted way he explores depression and
Um,
that is very true. In the fifth book, depression does seem to be kind of wiped under the rug quite easily in this book. So I do agree with that. Um, and again, his humor, I cannot get on with his humor at all. I
Sorry,
cannot get on with his dialogue at all. I really find it cringy.
is
There's a lot
not
of
for
things.
Terry.
It,
Oh, yeah,
no, there's a lot of things in this book that are related to the wider cosmere, which again is something that people have been complaining about. I
yeah,
didn't really mind. Like, yes, it becomes a bigger part of the story, but for me, I was just more interested in what was going on and not trying to connect things. Like, that doesn't bother me.
yeah. I'm not a Cosmere reader either, so
No, I'd like all of these theories that people have. Like, I'm not really bothered. I just want to read the story we're reading now.
yeah.
So I don't know. I just have a really complicated relationship, and I said I was gonna have a big break from Sanderson,
Uh-huh.
but my wife bought me Yumi and the Nightmare
Oh,
painter for
okay.
Christmas, or like part of my Christmas or birthday. I can't remember, close together. So I will be reading that. Thankfully, it's only 350 pages, so I'm interested to see what he can do in a book that's like a quarter of his normal size.
Yeah, and almost a normal length book.
Yeah. So I like Sanderson. There's a lot that I like about him, and I would consider him one of my favorites, I guess, but uh, I can see him only being pushed down as I move through time and read more books.
Well, wait till you read Malazan.
Well, shocking that you brought that up, right?
Not that
It's
I'm pushing you or anything like that.
it's in the plan, Philip, I promise.
Okay, okay.
My plan is to read, so like right now I'm studying, okay? So my reading time for my own pleasure has decreased.
Yeah.
Um, so and I find myself like very tired. So I don't think I have the brain space right now to be reading
Fair
Malazan.
enough. Fair enough.
So my plan is to read Gardens of the Moon this summer,
Ah, okay.
and then I might have to wait until my next break to continue the series.
Okay.
So
Good.
it is on the cards. I'm going to do it.
I'll have a short little summer read for you too. It's called While Darkness Gathers.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yes. Yes, that is in the plans.
Oh, okay. I mean, I was actually joking. You don't have to read it, but
Oh no, it totally is.
okay.
Especially as you've again made a kind of shorter book that makes it easier to
It
squeeze it
is
in.
much shorter. Yeah, it's a little 91,000 word novel. It's you know.
No, no, I'm an Idan fan, so
Okay.
I would definitely be reading it for sure. I really love the series.
Well, good. That's good. That's I appreciate that actually a lot. And you wrote some nice reviews of the trilogy as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you mean on Goodreads or?
Yeah, Goodreads. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I have talked about it on the channel as well, a
Yes,
little
indeed.
bit.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Um, but yes, I will read that, I promise.
cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. And have we missed any important authors or series that are a big
Probably.
do? Yeah,
I
probably.
mean, I'm a big Hobb fan as
Oh,
well, big
yes. Yes,
Realm of the
right.
Elderlings fan.
Yeah, that's big.
These are the only ones I have on display. So that's
Huh.
probably why you might have not realized. So yeah, I read all of Realm of the Elderlings, and that is definitely probably a top five series for me.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Big fan. I'm one of the people who says that Life Ships is my favorite sub-series.
Okay. Fair. And I won't argue with that. It's up there for me. It's very close for me between live ships, but it would be the third of my three favorites. And then would be probably Fits in the Fool, which just gets edged out for me by Tawny Man.
Yeah.
But live
Yeah,
ships is in the conversation with those other two. Yeah.
I think why I love that series so much is she fooled me with a lot of
Uh-huh.
things.
Yeah.
And that's I love it when a book fools me. When
Yeah.
something happens and I'm like, I did not see that coming. Well done. Round of applause.
Yeah.
I can't really talk about it because of spoilers,
Be
but
spoilery. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, I think you probably know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
just the scope of the story from start to end, when you look back at it, when you finish the series, you're like, wow, that is just such a wonderful
Hmm.
story, basically. It's just the way it grows and
Yeah.
yeah,
For me too, it was, and it's probably a product of the shift from a first person in Farseer to a third person narrative in Live Ship Traders. Because in Farseer, if I had any, it's not a deep criticism or anything, but it did feel like the villains in Farseer were very two-dimensional, very just, there was not a lot to Regal, for example, other than being
yeah,
princeling who was ambitious. It's very typical snotty,
yeah,
ambitious, vicious, narcissist. Whereas Live Ship Traders introduces a villain, if you will, that is one of the
yeah,
most complex characters you'll come across.
absolutely. And
So
everybody's
apart,
always
yeah,
yeah, everybody's always talking about Hobb's character work, and
yeah, yeah,
that's a beauty of this series with the third person, multiple POVs,
yeah,
is that you get a lot of character growth through lots of different characters. Like I
yeah,
was talking about earlier, Malta, Althea, Kennet, there's so many of them. And
yeah,
yeah, the evil character, the nuances of whether he is evil, this kind of whole question of basically violence begets violence.
yeah, yep.
And
It's
therefore, is
explored
it
so.
really their fault in a way, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's explored with real depth and sensitivity. And this Hobb is one of the writers, along with Gwyn and Stephen Erickson, who and Tolkien, who make me cry the most.
Yeah,
Hobb will break your heart over and over again. Um, so yeah, I mean, she's just as much as I feel like when people talk about humor and the authors who make you laugh, there's for me Mark Lawrence, Joe Abercrombie, Terry Pratchett, but when the ones who make me cry, Hobb is among the probably the most, along with Stephen Erickson, and John Gwynn again, and Tolkien, and Mark Lawrence as well. There, Mark Lawrence is interesting because he does both for me. But
nice.
yeah.
Yeah, I've not read any Lawrence. I mean, it's just not enough time to read everything.
Yeah, well, if you ever do, I highly recommend the Library trilogy, starting with the the book that broke the world. Is that the first one? No, that's the second one. The
Wouldn't
book that
burn?
wouldn't burn. Yeah, the book that
Yeah,
wouldn't. Is
yeah.
the first one. Yeah.
But another author would be King, Stephen King.
Ah,
I'm
yes. Yeah, good one.
I,
Yeah, we talked a little
I'm
bit there. Yeah.
becoming a little bit like more and more of a King fan. I've only read like 14 or 15 books or something
I've
out
only
of
read
his
15.
yeah, yeah,
That's a good amount.
out
Yeah,
of his 281 books, So
crazy. Wow. So Dark Tower is among them, though.
yes, absolutely love Dark Tower, but every single I don't rate books, but if I were to rate books, none of them would be less than 4 stars out of all of the 14 books. So like just the
Wow.
consistency. I mean, there
Wow.
is something to be said that I have read most of the like most famous ones, so therefore, it's kind of likely that I'm going to like them more. I'm sure
Uh-huh.
there's
Yeah.
others in his back catalogue that aren't as famous that wouldn't be as good, but
Yeah.
I really love everything I've read, and Dark Tower is one of my favorite series for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that series. And even the controversial later books where it gets a little meta. I loved it. I was like, this is crazy. But
I had no problems with it. I love it when people experiment and do something different. Like
yeah,
it's moving the genre forward, and
yeah.
I'm into that.
That's one thing that I feel that they're very different writers in most respects, I would say. But one thing that Stephen King and Stephen Erickson have in common is they just go for it. They just go for it. And when you do read Malazan, I think you'll see a similar tendency to just get as weird and as big and vast as you can possibly get. So that's something that I think. I'm surprised there isn't more talk about this, and I know people who actually are Malazan fans who don't care for Dark Tower or vice versa. So
Okay.
I don't understand that entirely. I feel like the two series should attract similar minds, people who love it when things just get really weird and when things get really vast and when the author just goes for it, you know. But
Yeah, I'm super excited to read it. I'm going to be honest with you, Philip. I'm kind of getting a little bit of fatigue with some fantasy, like how do I put this? Kind of traditional fantasy, right?
oh,
I'm starting to get a little bit of fatigue. I'll always read it.
Malazan might be just the thing, man.
Exactly. So I'm interested in things that are doing stuff, taking the genre further.
Yeah.
And you did that, especially with your last book in the
The third
series.
book is weird. Yeah.
Yeah, which I love. I'm so into the weird. I'm so into the.
Yeah.
So I'm looking to try and find stuff that is breaking the mold a little bit. So
Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to Malazan. I'm just into this now,
Oh, okay, cool. You're ahead of me.
about halfway through,
I'm
roughly.
still in the first one. So what do
How
you think?
far through are you?
But not very far. Not very far.
Okay,
Far enough to only say I expected the prose to be richer than it is, and
I get what you mean.
I'm
Yeah,
coming off of Baker, Second Apocalypse. That's just as the prose is brilliant. As much as I struggled with the bleakness of that series,
yeah.
the prose is amazing. And I've been reading a lot of Jenny Wirtz, Wars of Light and Shadow. Again,
These
top-notch
are
prose. And
these
then
are unfair comparisons, Philip.
exactly. So that's why I started to read The Grace of Kings. Is that the first one?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Started to read it, and I was like, huh. Well, I thought this was going to be like a, based on what I'd heard, more rich, more like, but it's a little more accessible is probably a fair word. And now that I've started to adjust to that, I'm starting to feel like I'm sinking into the story. So I'm
I,
still
I
very early on.
I think you'll be more pleased with this book.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so it's kind of fairly well known that the first book is quite different to the rest of the series.
Interesting. Okay.
So the first book is almost like a 600-page prologue.
Wow. Okay.
It's like
I've also noticed there's a fair amount of exposition in it.
exactly this is what I mean. It's like
Yeah.
people call it like a history book. It reads like a history
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is
I can
so
see
fast
that already.
moving.
Yeah.
It's just like little bit, little bit, little bit, and it's all connecting to give you the backdrop of the history of this world up to the point where he really wants to start slowing down, right? I found that book to be like quite whiplashy at times.
Uh-huh.
You do kind of get used to it, and the characters do start to grow a little bit, particularly
Okay.
two characters. But it is really just set up.
Yeah.
So if people who absolutely love like this constant moving of story really love that book, but people who like to slow down a bit prefer the rest of the series, is what I've heard.
I'm probably gonna prefer the rest of the
I
series.
think you'll much prefer this. This takes a lot more time with and the prose definitely starts to grow and gets more flowery. And
Interesting.
it is quite different, it's very different to other stuff I've read. This is
Okay.
there's a lot of focus on like philosophy and teaching and the importance of education and stuff. So I think you'll actually enjoy all of
Yeah.
that
I
thematic
I
work.
can see that where I'm probably guilty of some of that in The Way of a Dan, honestly, is the setup stuff. It's a setup book in some ways for what follows. And you do feel I felt certainly obligated to do more world building and that kind of thing in The Way of a Dan. And then later, okay, now I can get on with the faster pace, the
Yeah,
story itself, the war and everything else, and then the aftermath and all of that. So for me, book one is a trickier book than a book two or a book three.
sure.
But,
But yeah, so in this book, you don't have any world building because you already know the world. You already know
okay,
basically everything there is to know that is important to this story.
it's
And
been
you,
it's been presented to you in the first book.
yeah. And I'm almost halfway through, and it just feels like just this really gradual. tightening of the screw where this tension is just ramping and ramping and ramping. And
Okay.
it's like it is slow paced. It is not, there's like no fighting, there's no action scenes or anything. It's a lot of people talking and
Huh.
political intrigue, and it's just I can just really feel this tension building up, and something's going to be amazing, I feel. So I'm really enjoying that so far.
Well, I shall be patient with it. And like I said, I am starting to feel like I'm sinking into the story now. So yeah, cool. Yeah, very nice. And what are you excited about for the future of Sam Not So Wise? What are your plans for your channel? Do you actually plan ahead even, or just make it up as you go along? What are you excited to be reading and doing over there at Sam Not So Wise so people can head over there and subscribe and know what to expect?
Um, I think I guessed by how you asked the question. I'm not the biggest planner. Um, not the biggest planner. I have like some ideas that are floating around my head and I might write down, but I kind of do just go with the flow and do what I want to do.
Yeah,
So it's hard to say what I'm excited about. What I am excited about, or I hope will build, is more of this, more conversations. I want to chat to people more.
good.
So that I'm excited to continue with my chat show, and I hope that others will invite me to theirs. That's what I'm here for, like I've said. So that's what really makes me excited about the future. So otherwise, my plan is just to keep reading,
Good.
hopefully reading good books and being able to talk about them when I've read them, and occasionally coming up with something more general that I want to talk about and do that. So that's really the plan. I had this idea that I wanted to talk about like my journey of studying,
Uh-huh.
um, but it's kind of just fallen off really. So I don't know.
Could do that in a more, I don't know, we'll talk about Will from the Brothers Gwyn. We'll sometimes talk about the books that he's reading for his uni, right?
So
So,
I've been mentioning my reads in my wrap-ups. So I do a monthly wrap-up and I'll talk about my university reads in there. But
yeah.
so that will continue. Unfortunately, I'm only doing like one small literature module this semester, so I'm only really talking about a few short stories. So hopefully that will improve later. But yeah, otherwise I'm just going with the flow, to be honest. And like I say, I'm excited to read Malazan. Um, Dandelion Dynasty, man, this I always have to think about how to say that word because I always watch Americans who say dynasty, but I'm British, it's dynasty. Uh, I'm
Careful,
excited.
we'll get you starting to say, Bernard Cornwell or something like that.
Never, never, never. Well, it's funny. Now I'm a linguistics student. I'm not allowed to make fun of American things anymore, you know.
Oh no.
You- You're supposed to be welcoming to all versions of English, you know. So
Right, right,
I
right.
can't I can't tell my wife off for her Americanisms anymore because that's prescriptivist. So, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I plan on reading what's it called? Oh my God, Gunmetal Gods.
Oh yes, I have the first book myself. It's on my list. Zamil Akhtar, is that?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I really want to try and read a bit more outside of the main books that people read and try and go into more
yeah.
indie stuff. But
Cool.
I still
Yeah,
feel like I'm catching up with a lot of other big series that I want to read. So I'll continue doing that. I want to read some China Mieville, really want to read him.
yes, yeah. Same
There's
here.
a lot of sci-fi stuff I want to read. I want to try and diversify with regards to female authors and non-white authors because so many times when I make these lists it's just white men and I want to be more expansive than that. So these are
Yeah.
my kind of plans.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So I would encourage everybody watching to go and check out Sam's channel, Sam Not So Wise. One of the reasons I love doing this, whatever we want to call this booktube thing, is that I get to meet people like you, Sam, and the friendships that we form are so meaningful. And the fact that we actually got to meet in person in Iceland, where you live, and you were kind enough to drive me all over Iceland.
Yeah.
It's been when I point to what doing this has meant for my life. This is one of the things I point to, and I say, "Look, I met this great guy. We didn't know each other. He had watched some of my videos, and we had some exchanges, and we met, and it was fantastic. So this is what it's all about, my friend. This is
That was a fun 3 days.
yeah, it was a fun 3 days. Yeah.
And like I've said before, I think, if anybody wants to blackmail Philip, I have a picture of him in just his swim shorts. So let me know.
Because we visited this thermal river where you can bathe and it's like 40 degrees air temperature Fahrenheit. And then in the water, it's like 90 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever. It's really quite, Iceland's beautiful, guys. It captured my imagination for sure, the landscapes. Poor Sam was driving me and I was like, oh, look at that. He's taking pictures of all these. Remember that when I was taking all those pictures?
Of
Yeah.
course, I love it. I love showing people around. Even the stuff that I've seen 10 times, it's still beautiful the 11th time. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to show people around.
We got soaked by a geyser.
Oh my God, that was odd. Like I've never seen that happen.
Yeah.
And
What was the
I
name of
got
the one? Stroker, right?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
The geyser we went to. And it
Yeah.
was feeling feisty that day because that was the biggest you'd ever seen it, right?
Biggest I've ever seen it, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
it absolutely
soaked
drenched
us.
me.
I had my video camera out and I was like, oh, it's coming up. You could see it bubbling up and then boom. And then you can see me going, ah, running away. And I think you're in there looking like panicked and running and
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's scary because that water is
it's
like
hot.
boiling basically. So
Yeah.
I thought, oh my God, this is the end of me. Uh,
It was quite dramatic. But yes, everybody visit Iceland. It's fantastic. Just otherworldly landscape, beautiful, breathtaking, with some really nice people. So, yeah. All right, and check out Sam's channel. Thank you, everybody, for watching this. And until next time.